There we go. There's Dr. Brown getting down. Ladies and gentlemen, this is it. We're at WWDNYK Studios. My name is Dr. James Lyons-Weiler, and today we have a very special event, a very special guest. Unfortunately, he couldn't be here in studio, but we're working it out. We got all the sound check done. Everything should be working fine. We're going to rumble in the internet jungle with Dr. Dale Brown. The question is, can vaccines be made safer? Doc Brown, how you doing?
I'm doing well, doing very well. So I'm excited about our discussion.
Me too. I think a lot of people are very confused by this, and I represented myself in the promotional material as somebody who's not anti-vax. But the first thing I want to say is that doesn't make me anti-vax.
Yeah.
Right? Not being anti-vax does not automatically pit me against every human being on the planet who would choose not to have a vaccine.
Yeah.
Or wouldn't want other people to vaccinate for their own reasons or whatever.
Yeah.
So I'm now. Does this sound like I'm being squishy and wishy-washy? I think people would get under the hood. Yeah, well, people might say that, but once they get under my hood, they realize that there's nothing squishy or wishy-washy about what I have to say. So let's do this. We'll take turns. The first thing we'll do is let's identify the points that we think that we agree on. Yeah. Okay, so you go first.
I would think we both agree that there is massive harm being done by the vaccine, schedule, the individual vaccines of themselves. We understand that there are identified harms that are being done that the government is willing to basically accept and state that they know are being caused, and then there are ones that are being covered up. We both know and agree that we know that science, like Unbreaking Science, science is broken right now. It really is. And we both agree that there's way too much financial corruption that is distorting what science really should be about, which is furthering and bettering society and communities and the lives of people. So I think we agree on that.
Okay, so I think I counted 2 there, so I'll take 2.
Yeah, no, go ahead.
Oh, that's good. I think that you and I agree that the current vaccines that are on the market, there's something seriously wrong with them from a formulation standpoint, and that the science that has been conducted to prop up the continuation of these specific vaccination technologies, these specific options, doesn't qualify as science.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah. Okay, cool. You got another one that we agree to?
Yeah, give me 2 seconds. Ashley, call my wife real quick, see what she needed, okay? She just called my phone. So my wife just called my phone. I'll make sure my staff kind of touch base with her, make sure everything's okay.
Is she bringing your hat in? Here, I got a treat for the listeners.
Yeah,
hang on just a minute. For the watch. Hang on just a minute. All right, so this is my tribute to the Wild Doc. This is he didn't bring his hat to where he's at, but that's my tribute. We're going to go back and forth on this with hot dog in it, but all right, so what else do we agree on?
I really think that, there's so much stuff. I think I agree, on just about everything. I think when it comes to the harms that are being done, not taking care of people properly after vaccines have been harmed. Science is denying vaccine injury and thus leaving in that wake of denial, they're leaving people to literally fend for themselves to try and find help in recovering their children from harm that was done when the parents were saying, one, the parents believed the vaccine was protecting their own child and they were safe and effective, and number 2, they felt they were doing a greater good for the societal good of reducing infectious illness spread, so they felt, and then society abandons them. So I think we both agree that we need to take care of those people.
Yeah, absolutely, totally. Something else that I think that we agree on, Dale, is that every medical procedure practiced by anyone in any medical profession, paramedical profession, whatever, comes with choice. It comes with the basic human right of choice. And parents should be the ones that are choosing for children up until the age of 18. After the age of 18, they should be seen as wise people who guide their young adult children these days. But 100% for choice. No coercion. Coercion's wrong in every way possible.
One little slight kind of, when we talk about choice, what I tell people is you're only given a choice when you're given truth. And if you're never given the full truth and an understanding of it, then you're never given a choice. You've been swindled, you've been coerced, you've been, lied to into accepting something. The moment of time you could say, well, they're given a choice. Well, no, you're not given a choice when you're being lied to, or you're being given wrong information, or you're being given only one side of the coin. That's not a choice, in my opinion. So right now, what I tell people is, I don't care if the doctor asked you, would you like a vaccine or not, and you were able to say no, you still were not given a choice. And if you said yes, you still weren't given a choice.
That's right.
Because they never gave you information to make a decision, to make a true choice.
That's right. Yeah. So we could go on for probably a whole episode on things that we 100% agree on, but I want to get down to the fundamental question of how can two people who agree so much on what's wrong with the current vaccination paradigm, and why do we differ on the fundamental question about whether vaccines could be made safer? And I'll tell you what, I gamed this. I'll admit I gamed this a little bit, because we're specifying the question, could vaccines be made safer? And it's not a win to say, yeah, give everybody half a dose and you reduce, the risk by half. It's not a win to say, if you skip vaccines on the schedule, or if you only take one vaccine in the schedule, right? Yeah. So I'm going to put my neck out there, and on this debate, I'm going to make it for real. I'm going to say that every single vaccine that's out there, whether it's useful or necessary or not, right, it could be made safer. Every single one of them, and that's my contention. I'm throwing down the gauntlet. And so, why am I wrong?
So, I believe you're right. They could be made safer, but when something is overall aggregately harmful, at what point in time are they actually giving a benefit over their aggregate harm? Is their aggregate benefit stronger and better and more than their aggregate harm? So that's what you truly need to measure to then say that they're safe. If a vaccine doesn't cause the child to die today or tomorrow, if we could eliminate the SIDS risks from vaccines, or all these other things, the brain damage risks, all these things, if we could eliminate those things, but yet they still cause asthma, and we have thousands of kids dying of asthma and tens of thousands suffering with asthma, and years later, because they didn't acquire that natural infection, their body's immune system didn't develop and balance appropriately. So the vaccine could be completely safe, but the benefits of the illness may be then prevented. So now there's beneficial effects to going through these childhood illnesses. So you have to give that too, with the vaccine being non-negative in a direct sense. It has to also not have indirect negative effects.
So tell me one example of net positive effect of, let's say, some childhood infections. Give me any examples, yeah.
So you look at mumps, and you look at the female cancers. You look at certain illnesses like measles can help in overcoming kidney nephrosis, nephrology issues, so kidney problems. You look at whooping cough and expansion and improvements in lung capacity, and improvements in decline in asthma rates and those things. So there's a developmental process the body goes through there. And the reality is, I would say almost every infectious illness is when the body is given what it needs to fight off that infection appropriately in that moment in time, then guess what? There's going to be a net and aggregate benefit maybe when its ability to fight off future infections of other varying strains of influenza, let's say, you know that as a fact,
Yeah.
or measles' ability to develop the immune system to be able to recognize foreign or cells that aren't necessarily foreign but are cancerous or carcinogenic. It identifies, it clears, it has a more efficient capability of doing those things. So now you have this system that's healthier, it's balanced.
So your contention is that the immune system is like a muscle, and if you don't use it, you don't give it a chance to develop to its full potential. That you could be taken by surprise in the future by things that would otherwise be relatively benign. So you've made some good points there. I can't disagree or agree with them because I'm not familiar with the science of, there are trends of lower cancer rates in people if they've had measles. I'm going to play devil's advocate on whether or not that is due to the fact that people that had the measles that were going to develop cancer died from measles, and that's not true, right?
I've heard that.
But you thought about that too, right? So
yes, I have.
There's selection.
Well, more people are living, so these people that would have been killed by measles are now living long enough to get cancer. So it's not an increase in cancer.
Right.
No,
Right. So all of us, I know a thing or two about cancer, personally and professionally. Every single one of us will develop cancer if we live long enough. If we kept our medical situation, take vaccines out of the question, right? We just have a finite number of cellular divisions that the human body can handle. We don't know what the upper limit is, but I think like dogs with long bones, big dogs have long bones and they tend to get bone cancer because they undergo extracellular development, extracellular divisions to get that phenotype. People with certain mutations. Yeah.
Is that in wild dogs in Australia too that are unvaccinated?
Yeah, good question. Right. Yeah, vaccine's the ultimate confounder in all of this. But we're such a highly vaccinated population. You're right.
Food we feed our dogs, you know what I mean? I'm like, are we seeing cancer in coyotes?
Well, the control group on that is that smaller dogs tend not to get leg cancer. I'm just talking about the tissue. So people have predisposing mutations to cancer, colon cancer, and they get one broken copy from mom, MSH2 or other genes. They get a working copy from dad or vice versa, and then at some point in time, the body develops a cell line in the epithelium of the colon that has a broken MSH2 through somatic mutation. And if we all live long enough, I think we all develop cancer all the time. But I mean, we'll eventually all get a cancer diagnosis, and we don't necessarily die from it. But I think if we all live long enough, we'll all get cancer. But in terms of relative rates of measles, there may be something to the fever, right? Yeah. Having a fever due to measles infection.
Well, that's where, if you study Cooley's toxins, these cancer vaccines they're doing. Now, there are ones that are actually trying to do more like a vaccine, and there are cancer vaccines that all they're doing is basically injecting an infection localized to the tumor, and that's just mounting an immune response. Yeah. They were using in purposely infecting people with malaria in reversing cancer.
Yeah. So Cooley's toxins, I'm glad you brought that up because I get to pitch one of my books. I have a whole chapter on Cooley's toxins and cures versus profits. It's a great, yeah, absolutely.
I've not read that one. I will be buying it immediately, bro.
It's a great story. It's a great historical story. The chair of the Department of Radiology at the university where he was at, he was curing cancer people with osteosarcomas. Well, and what he had done was he noticed that one of his patients that had an osteosarcoma who came down with an infection survived. And so he remembered somebody else 8 years prior or something that he had an infection of the same type. and he wanted to know if that person also survived. And so he walked to the person's house, knocked on the door. The guy answered the door. 8 years later, with osteosarcoma at that time, it was a death sentence. And so he had a couple of different concoctions that he used to induce fever. It's not that different than using lipopolysaccharides now to induce fever, right? And toxins from organisms, microorganisms. But this guy actually induced fever in people, and he would have to bring the fever up to a certain amount of time and hold it high, and he would manage it. It was very, very controlled setting. And the chair of the department that he was in got a contract, was given half of the radium in the country from the people who had the mines. And he said, your stuff is not science based. It's variable from patient to patient. It's not it's not working. Right in front of face of the data of people surviving more on his toxins, and radiology is the way to go from the future. And that's where we got radiation treatment from, and why it's so popular. This is people elbowing out competitors just because they're next to them. Not for once did he think maybe we could use toxins and radiation. No, he had to have the whole kit and caboodle, and that's going to be the death knell of our society. He had to have it all, and that kind of hubris and selfishness is, disgusting. But what about the other situation? You mentioned female cancers and other benefits of infections.
So, the reality is, like what you were saying there, is that you're saying that we may have these genetic predispositions, which there's lots of things that, and we've got checks and balances with our genes, so it's not just one gene automatic. Very, very few instances is it one gene, and you're going to get that at this day, this time in your life, just like everybody else in your family. Everybody gets at different ages. They may have that genetic predisposition. So like colon cancer, and then infections and fevers. So what if each time we get an infection, each time we get a flu, every year, we are clearing that many cancer cells from our body. And if we prevent these infections, ultimately what we're doing is we're preventing the body's natural reoccurring clearance mechanism by activating our immune system. That's what, and I send you, so the study on pregnancy and the influenza vaccine having not what they thought. They used to think that pregnant mothers had a depletion or immune compromise. And in fact, it's not immune compromise. It's actually more of an inflammatory immune response. And when they were doing their studies with lipopolysaccharides, they saw a depressed immune response over non-pregnant females. When they did it challenging their blood with the virus of the flu, they saw a greater immune response over non-pregnant women. So they're like, we've been wrong all along. And that was in 2014. They're like, we've been wrong all along. Women don't have a depressed immune system. They actually have a stronger immune response. And then they literally say the overexcitation, that over-inflammatory immune response is what can cause the excessive tissue damage, the fetal loss, the fetal brain abnormalities, all these things. And they discovered the flu vaccine increases the inflammatory response even further, adding to the risks to pregnant women. So, so that's the problem with, even if we had a safe vaccine that could prevent an infectious illness, what we're then doing is we're literally circumventing, we're derailing literally a path that may have very specific reasons that we are needing these infectious illnesses on a regular basis.
Fair enough. And so it makes sense then that the reason why we're getting a higher number of different kinds of infections after the measles infection is not that it's damage to the immune system, it's that the immune system is capable of mounting a response so you get a diagnosis. As opposed, and that's the difference between an infection and a diagnosis. And the subclinical infections happening after vaccination all the time. I mean, the pieces of the puzzle certainly do fit together. I think I learned a new perspective today. I'm going to chew on it a while, Doc Wild. But let's get back to the point at hand, which is we know people are being hurt by the current vaccines. And if you're a pragmatist and a realist like I am, vaccines are going to be around in the medical toolbox for some time to come, and those people who who are abolitionists and don't want any vaccines on the market whatsoever, I've always wished them the very best, and I don't work against them. I may provide an inconvenient alternative viewpoint, and that may be a reality, and so there may be unintended negative consequences on their agenda. But you got to realize, and I said this to somebody on Facebook yesterday, a lot of what I see in terms of criticisms of different viewpoints in this movement of vaccine risk awareness is similar to somebody, from the 8th Infantry criticizing somebody that's, another infantry that's storming Normandy Beach for not being at Berlin yet, right? And so if we're going to criticize somebody who's upsetting the apple cart, right? And I'm going right out there in terms of strategy here. Everything that I say in terms of science, for the context of the particular topic, let's say that I say, okay, let's take unsafe epitopes out of vaccines, because with an adjuvanted vaccine and an unsafe epitope, you get autoimmunity, right?
Yep.
Someone might say, well, we need that epitope in an infection. It's what causes the disease, and that disease elicits immune response and trains the immune system. But nevertheless, the autoimmunity that's occurring right now with the vaccination program is occurring because the vaccines that are on the market right now. And if we can win the battle, if we can win the argument that vaccination is not anathema to managing public health, if we had safer vaccines that brought about a meaningful immune response without the risk of autoimmunity, say to unsafe epitopes. So the first thing I would do is take out the metals. To make vaccines safer, take out aluminum, mercury. It's the most ridiculous, stupid thing in the world to dig up these metals, purify them, and inject them into our pregnant women and into our infants. Absolutely. That we agree on. Yeah. The unsafe epitopes issue really goes to the key of something you brought up earlier, and I think you have some interesting insights on, which is before the pregame discussion here, which was these unsafe epitopes. They might be causing what we call disease in an infected individual, and they might be causing harm in the injected individual. And what's the relative percentage if you control for population size? So the same exact people that might have a serious adverse event to a vaccine might be the ones who get the most sick due to molecular similarity of their proteins and the measles, let's say. So yep. I think it's fair to say that nobody's claiming that measles infection is safe for everybody. Yeah, there may be some people who have a really, really nasty reaction to having a measles infection. We know people like that. They have the lesions on their brain, and nobody knows why. It's an autoimmune thing, but it may be the same exact epitope that's in the measles that's in the wild, right? Is the same epitope in the vaccine that's causing the encephalitis in the kids and encephalopathy in the kids, and those kids would have had a really bad experience with the measles infection. So what do we do then? Do we say, okay, let's just try widespread worldwide measles infection? And I hate to go to measles. I'm not doing that tactically. I'm just going to measles because it's the thing that came to my mind. I know people that are propagandists try to go to measles every time. Pick something like mumps. It doesn't matter what I'm talking about. People had serious adverse events from vaccination for all of these pathogens in injections. The question is, do we know that the widespread infection around the world that would happen if we abolished vaccines wouldn't also find those same people? And I said this in Utah for the first time. Your descendants, if you're truly anti-vaccine and you want to take vaccines away, your descendants might be mad at you because the only option that they have for immunity is infection. And they know that they're at risk because science has projected, to say if you succeed in taking all vaccines away, no unsafe epitopes, no adverse effects from metals, right? Then the very descendants of the people who are suffering right now might then suffer a lot underneath infection, and we don't know that that's safer either for them. And I'm talking about a subset of the population. I think the statement is probably correct that most people can handle these mild childhood infections. So it's kind of like a catch-22. And that's why my position on this is to say I'm going to argue that we make the current vaccines as safe as possible, but I'm going to respect choice, as we already agreed on. I'm going to disrespect coercion. I think coercion is disgusting. They talk about it overtly. They think that it's something that they're entitled to do. We have to coerce these stupid people who, for the reasons that you brought out. The science is suppressed on some adverse events, so the doctors don't know. So they think that the people are stupid that experience these adverse events firsthand, and then they say, "Hey, this really happened to me, doc, and I'm an X-vaxxer. I don't want to take vaccines again." So what do we do about that? What do we do about possibility that in the future, if we don't have vaccines, the same people, have encephalopathy and serious problems?
Well, first I want to say, how much money do you think we have spent and are spending currently on all vaccine research, science, testing, development, everything? Let's just take all that money and not even just go feed the hungry. Let's go ahead and start developing and building infrastructures in communities and countries where they lack clean water, they will lack access to nutrition. Those things that are well established to lower the diabetes rate, the cardiovascular risk rate, the autoimmune rate, did I mention cancer rate?
Excuse me.
The allergy and asthma and related all infectious illness rates. So if we were to say we're developing, spending millions to billions to develop one safe vaccine, that's a safe vaccine against one infectious disease, then we got to do that for all these other infectious diseases. And we've got to test it to make sure it's safe. So we're going to have some individuals who are sacrificed on that proverbial altar to show and prove until we get that safe vaccine. Meanwhile, we wasted that time, that money, and the natural resources and energy of human beings when if we had redirected it towards something that is proven safe, proven effective, and proven to have multi-leveled in shotgun effects, beneficial effects, until we do that, I say, why do we even argue about we should abolish vaccines, get that in place, use all our money and effort towards the things we know are safe, know are effective, and know would have downstream massive beneficial effects over all people's health and lives, and far more lives would be saved. We know that for a fact. We're just not putting our efforts there. That said, and the reality is the latent onset of encephalitis and brain damage due to a measles infection later on and autoimmunity. We don't necessarily understand why that occurs. The science doesn't. But yet, what if it's because the mucosal membrane immune system was hampered and damaged because of the DTP vaccine, or it was because they didn't have clean water access, they weren't well nourished. So those people that is occurring may be able to be exposed to those epitopes in nature and natural circumstances with a mucosal membrane immune system barrier that's strong enough. Thus, when they're exposed to it, their body recognizes how to fight it off and clear it, versus when their immune system is damaged, when they have increased gut permeability or leaky gut, they have exposed neurons through inflammation. They're able to acquire that into a central nervous system infection rather than the blood-brain barrier being intact and healthy because of nutrition, clean water, all these other things that we should be providing to everybody in the first place, no matter what. This doesn't make sense what I'm getting at here. If we were to do those things first, we wouldn't even have the argument. And we may then see where true genetics affect, the percentage of true genetics affect. Because the environment may be the genetics may be pulling the trigger. The genetics may be loading the gun and environment pulls the trigger. We all know that statement. But the reality is, I'm like, just stop pulling the trigger, then we don't have the issue. To change the environment, you stop pulling the trigger. I don't care if I've got every chamber in a pistol revolver loaded. If I don't pull that trigger, it ain't harming nobody. So let's stop pulling the triggers. You know what I mean?
This is beautifully stated. A very well argued point, and a beautiful vision. And I'm an evolutionary biologist, it's a beautiful vision. And I'm an evolutionary biologist and an ecologist and an environmentalist myself. And in this toxic soup, for sure, I see this continuation of dumping toxins, and I have this kind of theory of political division of the American public on the basis of which toxins are you most against, right? So the liberals are like, we're going to inject toxins into our people. There's still corporate toxins, of course, which came from petroleum, the petroleum industry. And then we have the conservatives that allegedly, and I'm learning at a fast rate that's a complete mischaracterization of conservatives, but allegedly really don't care about the environment, and that they are cozied up to the industry that likes to dump and pollute, and that's the most important thing, is money from, they don't care what they do to the planet. And the irony in that is that the source of the toxins is the same corporations. Historically, it's the exact same corporations, and this debate's been going on for a long time about allopathy coming in and saying, okay, this is the only way to do health. Allopathy is a 100% drug-based. We have a pill for everything. Forget about exercise. Forget about vitamins and nutrition. None of that matters. We're your solution. We're the savior of human health. And a lot of what they're doing is masking symptoms, and that's the same thing with vaccines for sure. They're masking symptoms of a lesser form of the infection, and the cost, the disease burden from the current slate of vaccines, the current offerings of vaccines that are on the market, is huge. If we actually admit what we think we're seeing. It's immense. It's almost all of the health problems that are plaguing American citizens today, plaguing people around the world in highly vaccinated populations. And so all that they have, when I say they, I mean the vaccine risk denialists, all they have is denialism and scorn and disdain and ridicule of anybody who speaks out, which I don't care about, you don't care about. I don't care if somebody calls me a name. I'll be okay, right?
I chose my name.
Right, exactly. So, but as this rolls out in terms of the strategy, if we can show over the next 8 years, let's say, that all of the rates of these chronic conditions, including asthma and autism, autoimmunity, asthma is autoimmunity, of course, coming down as a result of something, let's say, of a microneedle patch vaccination, which, in full disclosure, the first thing I want to say is I realize... Sorry, say that again?
I said they're either going to do the microneedle patches or they're going to start doing aerosolization.
Right.
Vaccination.
So, exactly. So, I'm doing that. I know that that the audience that's likely to see this includes parents who have lost children to vaccination. Everything I'm saying, I'm cognizant of the people who have lost their children and their sons and their daughters to autism, and we'll never have a conversation. And I want to do full disclosure. I have absolutely no incentive to develop new vaccines. I have no financial interest whatsoever in any vaccination program. I don't know anybody personally, and I'm not doing business with anybody in any vaccination manufacturer or whatever. And I would never care to do so. But in rolling out a future in which we're reducing chronic illness, I would like to see people pull in the same direction of saying, okay, fine, you want a vaccine? I don't want a vaccine, but you want a vaccine? Then we should probably look after your health too and make them safer. And microneedle patches look really interesting to me because there's no mercury, there's no aluminum. I've seen the list of chemicals. There certainly are some chemicals that are not desirable. The exposure's less than, it's like a little patch that goes on. I could bring up some of the images, but a little patch that goes on for a few hours.
I've seen them, yeah.
But the rollout, for me, it's not the existence of the vaccine that's good or bad. It's how it's used. So let's say that we replace intradermal subcutaneous injection with microneedles. I think that they ought to not be administered by medical doctors. I think that the medical community, pediatricians, should be divorced from the question of how you want to choose to give your child immunity so much that it just should be something that you pick up at the drugstore and you bring it home, right? If there's a measles thing going around in your family or in your school, and you care to protect your child, then go get these Band-Aids and put it on your kid if you want to. And it's not over the counter. It doesn't require prescription. You just put it on, and that's fine. And we cut out all the profit motive. We cut out all that baloney of kickbacks to doctors for making incentives. And then we're back to the bubble ring, vaccination. And people who would prefer to choose, really, this is how much I am for choice. If people want to have their child become immune through infection, they have that option. And we just all relax, step back, and respect each other, which is also a beautiful vision, right? And then we can say, don't be stupid. Don't be injecting mercury and aluminum into your kid. It's not safe. There's no way that anybody can say that aluminum at any level is safe, because the science hasn't shown, the science was not done to determine a safe level of injectable aluminum. And we already know injectable mercury is not safe. The thimerosal studies are there. They're just denied. So, cool.
Yeah, I think that the biggest thing is, again, the downstream. So the influenza vaccines, are those going to have beneficial effects for heterotypic immunity and mutating strains down the road? Or are we going to, again, be at the same issue where we're seeing infectious illness rates, pneumonia, and influenza rates go up because of the loss of these homocytic immune responses we can get from natural infection? Mm-hmm. And also microneedle patches, yes, they would be, skin that still is not mucosal membrane where we were naturally supposed to become infected. So then we're still dealing with that. Are we still building up the mucosal barrier, a barrier immune response? Are we still going to be in the same situation we are now, whether it's microneedle or injected, with the whooping cough issue? Because of the pathway of infection, it doesn't provide mucosal membrane barrier resistance. It allows for colonization for longer periods of time and reoccurring colonization.
Yeah, I think the reason why we're there with pertussis is the same reason why we're there with mumps, and the same reason why we're there with measles now, is that the DTaP and the Tdap, and same thing with any vaccine, is going to induce selection in the wild for types of pertussis that are immune to the vaccine. And we're seeing that. We're seeing mumps, vaccine-resistant mumps. It's just no different than antibiotic resistance. And so my answer to that is, if we have, let's say, microneedle patch, what you do is you got an outbreak of some condition at your school, and that measles type, let's say, is genotyped right away. And that genotype information is then broadcast to pharmacies. The pharmacies print the microneedles on site, matching your genotype. They create it matched to the local genotype. It's highly distributed, it's decentralized, right? And then you can go, oh, did you get the patch? No. Did you get the patch? Okay. You both didn't get the patch? Fine, let's have a measles party. You want a lollipop? Yeah. Right? Yeah. That's what I think we should do.
I see the science nerd in you coming out right now with this vision of how they would be able to do all this stuff. And it is, again, you have a vision of being able to do that, continuing to allow for choice, making vaccines safer, and obviously you'd want them to be effective and having the beneficial downstream indirect beneficial effects, as well as the not having the indirect negative effects. Like, that would be the picture perfect scenario. But ultimately, before we even discuss safer vaccines and everything like that, because as soon as they have that perfectly safe vaccine with no negative effects, everything is going to be mandated, unless we figure out how to vaccinate against the love of money. And once we can do that, we really wouldn't even have to have this discussion anymore, because everything would work itself out.
I'm not sure. I'm not sure, because in my view of the future, Dale, that the microneedle patch or the lollipop vaccine for pertussis, right? What's pharma thinking? Why don't they take a clue from the moms? Let's make a lollipop vaccine for pertussis, so we hit that mucosal, right, and get that right immunity. That the long-term safety studies are actually conducted, so that we know, randomized prospective clinical trials, vaxxed versus unvaxxed, one vaccine at a time, right? And so what we have to do is we have to say, not that we have to, but in order for the vision that I'm talking about to manifest, we would have to demonstrate that the public health burden that we're seeing right now is due to the current vaccines, but that there are other options so that we can win the argument. Right? There are other vaccination options that are safer, so we can win that argument on causality. Now, if the abolitionists then want to swoop in at the last moment and they want to say no vaccine is allowed on the market until you have 15 years of health outcomes, I'm 100% behind that. That's fine. Let's get 15 years of health outcome from randomized clinical trials. And to tell you the truth, if we take out the unsafe epitopes, we make microneedle patches, I'm giving away intellectual property with vitamin E crystals. Put vitamin E crystals on your microneedles, people. Don't use these other hydrosulfonate bullshit things that we don't need on macro. Make them with vitamin E crystals, and we do 15 years of safety studies.
But then we're going to see that chronic illness rates increase at a 16-year time slot. We're going to wind up having, and it's not 18 months now, it's 16 years, and we did the 15-year study on safety, and we showed it safe. But, it's like with the polio vaccine, though, the lollipop idea and things like that, we have a mucosal membrane vaccine. It's the sugar cubes. So you take those in these third world countries and you see non-polio acute flaccid paralysis rates go up. So you see paralysis continue to be there or even escalate. And it's like, so they're preventing polio but not paralysis.
Do you know why? It's because they're vaccinating with aluminum-containing vaccines for other things at the same time in the same kids.
The
they're putting that polio virus protein that matches the myelin sheath protein, right? They're putting that into this kid, and they're getting nailed with aluminum in the arm, as if it's a separate organism, right? The arm versus the oral. This acute flaccid myelitis that nobody knows what's causing. Do you ever notice that it happens to peak right as parents are bringing their kids to get vaccinated to be able to make it to school? So I want to. Go ahead.
But then I've got studies on enterovirus. I believe it's enterovirus. I have to look at my studies, but enterovirus 71, I think it was, and it's like, so honeysuckle prevents that. Can bind to it, neutralize it. So it's like, why don't we start again using the natural resources around us that are safer, that are well established to have other varying health benefits on top of antiviral, those things. And your theory, though, here's a major problem with your theory. Your theory is that science is going to keep up or be faster than nature's constantly changing and evolving state of viruses and bacteria and things like that. We have mutations constantly going in both bacteria and viruses. You know about strain shift. So once we get one safe vaccine for one virus type, then we're going to have these other strains that are going to mutate and take over. It's strain replacement. And your theory is that science is going to be able to keep up with that.
Yeah, so exactly. What I want to say is I've done the math. I've calculated, given the published mutation rates of all the pathogens that are in all the vaccines. So the RNA viruses, the DNA viruses, the bacteria, and there are 6 vaccines on the market that I predict are absolutely worthless because of mutations right now. 6 of them.
Yeah.
Okay, and I'm working to publish that result. And it's the cause of vaccine failure. Antigenic shifting is the cause of vaccine failure. And they knew this. In the 1950s, there was a publication that said, for this whole-scale measles vaccine pipe dream that you have, if you don't update this every year, you're going to see vaccine failure for this measles in 2022. They knew it. Right? So back to my model, where you got an outbreak of measles in the school, it's immediately genotyped in real time, that's published, that's sent to all the pharmacies. The pharmacies program the computers to make new microneedles that match, microneedle patches that match that exact local genotype. All right? And then the parents can go pick it up and say, well, hey, do you have the new batch of microneedle patches printed yet? I want to come down and pick it up. Or not, or I don't want to pick it up. I'm going to have a lollipop instead. Or I'm just going to have an infection.
For us anti-vaxxers, do you know how scary the microneedle patch is? You know what? All I got to be doing is like hanging out and somebody says, you know how you used to slap like "kick me" or "I'm stupid" with a sticky pad on the back of somebody's shirt. They're just gonna come up and slap me with it and be like,
They're not going to tell you.
vaccinated. And then I'm gonna pull out. There's gonna be death results from the microneedle, but it's not gonna be because of the microneedle. It's gonna be an indirect effect of me turning around and shooting the person that slapped me with the microneedle.
Yeah.
The microneedle. I'm laughing too much.
I love it. No, listen, the very first time I posted a microneedle patch, the first time I heard about it, I posted it on my Facebook page. And I said, hey, what do you guys think about this? And I got my ass kicked by hardcore anti-vaxxers who are like, you're crazy. They're going to, who knows what's really in them. Somebody's going to sneak up behind me and they're going to pat me on the back and I'm going to be vaccinated. I totally see that. I totally see that point. But that's why I say we need to teach respect. We need to teach doctors the realities of the current slate of vaccines. We need to teach them that the parents are not stupid, and the parents are the ones that are doing that education right now. In Massachusetts, in Connecticut, all around the country, where parents are showing up by the hundreds. In Maine, 1,000 showed up to testify. They're educating. In Vancouver, they succeeded. 3 days of testimony to that committee changed that committee's viewpoints. So people say, oh, we're losing. We're not losing. It's just certain people in the movement are not winning certain cases in court. That's not a measure of whether we're winning or not.
There's certain battles that we're successful in. There's certain battles that right now the other side is successful in, with legislation and things like that. And that's the thing is like, I'm the person that this is where, like, even somebody commented here on Facebook, like the whole God factor and things like that. And obviously, if you're having a scientific conversation, you're never supposed to bring God into it. But the reality is, as a Christian, and just looking at the Bible and looking at it, I really wonder if the end times revelations, at least 1823, talking about pharmakeia, that's the Greek original text. It was the use of drugs, and granted, it's not the use of vaccinations, but when I study these things, the biggest idolatry we have, because people will question drugs and pharmaceutical companies all day long. They're like, yeah, they're corrupt. Vaccine issue? No, they can't be corrupt. It's children. Yeah. I'm like, so yeah, like they did with Paxil and Zoloft. Like lied and literally just completely orchestrated the studies to make the drugs look safe for children, and they lied about it, and that was children. So they'd lie about psychiatric issues with children and psychiatric medication, but not the vaccines they're giving the kids. Those would not ever be touched and be negative. But it's like, I hardly know where I was going there, but we've just got to get rid of the corruption issue before we ever can even think about your vision being anywhere possible. You know what I mean?
The other side of that, Dale, is that if you go to the market and if you go to the drugstore and you pick up a microneedle patch to drive the market and improve the sales of safer vaccines, you could throw it away. The power of the purchase, right? So if there's economic demand for
I would never purchase them, abolish.
No, I know you wouldn't. But what I'm saying, right? What I'm saying is you game the system economically so that the other vaccines become a net loss for any pediatrician, for any organization that wants to sell them. But the microneedle patches become a net gain because the vaccine risk-aware people are saying, we want to get these other vaccines off the market. We're going to vote with our dollars. We're going to spend $15 on a package of microneedles, and we're going to put it on the shelf so that when we abolish vaccines, I can show my grandchildren, look what they try to do to us with microneedles. Whatever you're going to do. My point is, we have the power of the purse. We have to take vaccines away from pediatricians. They don't belong in the hands of people that get kickbacks. And here in Pennsylvania, we have a piece of legislation by Metcalf that is 100% up your alley, where he says you can't have any financial kickbacks for incentives for vaccines, and you can't kick people out of your practice. In other words, you're a human being, you put on the white coat, you're a doctor, you're benefiting from your title, you get social benefits, you get financial benefits. Okay, you can't turn your back on people. This is, when did medical doctors think, when did they develop this attitude that they can turn their back on people for health? This is the wrong attitude. We need to reschool vaccines. And Tony Park was really into this too, with my Neurodevelopment Research Reform Consortium, to try to change how we educate pediatricians about vaccines. They need to know the whole story. They're they're liability free because they don't know any better. They can say, "Oh, we don't know any better." They're legally liability free because their predecessors maneuvered themselves into that situation. You can't sue your doctor. You can't sue vaccine manufacturers. Yeah. So I don't think I can say microneedle patches are safe because I haven't seen the studies. I've seen short-term studies. I haven't seen long-term. You may be exactly right that everybody who gets a microneedle patch might develop rheumatoid arthritis at the age of 45. It's something that they got 5 years ago. But Dale, you know the immune system well enough to know that those people would show some signs before, right? You know it well enough that those people would show some signs before.
Depends, because we can have very few to no symptoms, and it can be 10 years later before the autoimmune. You can have those autoantibodies there present in your bloodstream, but you have no clinical signs or symptoms, because it ultimately comes down to the level of your capability of healing over your level of tissue damage. So the antibodies are causing destruction of tissues, but your level of healing and repairing those tissues is greater at that moment in time. One person may last 50 years before they have any symptomatic issues, and one person may be 2 years, maybe months later. So it's just, you have to look at, you have an ever, I don't want to say evolving, but you have an ever, it's non-static state within everybody's physiology and homeostatic state of their neurology and their immunology. So that is a major factor in all of this.
Right.
So there was something about you're talking not the microneedles and stuff, and I had a thought there, but if I come back to it, I'll hit on again.
All right, so I'm not marketing microneedles. I do want to bring some of the images up though, because I went and I got them. So this is just a web browser here.
Yeah.
The microneedles are technologically interesting to me because I don't think I can browse the entire. Yes, I can. I can hit this right here. They're very interesting to me because there's a diversification of technology that I was not aware of even a couple of years ago. This might be scary to people, and I'm sorry if it scares you to look at these, and I understand why. There's even one that says that there's.
I want to know my enemy better than than my friends, so I can know if I see somebody carrying one of those around, I'll just make sure that I've got my hand on the trigger.
Well, there you go. There you go. There's new technology that there's one image here that's coming up. New technology that looks like it avoids going deep into the skin, and because it doesn't go deep into the skin, you're going to get the dendritic cell activation that you don't get from subdermal injection, and so I would expect that you get a longer lasting, effect. In other words, you wouldn't need as many boosters. They did find, here's a comparison of injection versus how shallow it goes. I'm sorry, you can't really see that. I have to increase. But
I can see it, right? Well, I guess on Facebook maybe not, but I mean.
And the whole idea is, if we inject subdermally, you know why they inject subdermally, intramuscularly? They inject intramuscularly because the moms used to actually suck the surface when they used to do the little needle. They hit you 100 times with it. The moms used to take their kid out into the parking lot and suck the toxins out because they were forced to vaccinate for school, and so the doctor's like, well, we'll just put it in the muscle, and moms can't get to it. This is still going on forever.
Hopefully they're not doing the injections in the buttocks, you know what I mean?
Yeah, well, that's
City Slickers. Come on, the old movie.
Yeah. But you had some things you wanted to go over too here, illness rates and death rates. Do you want to do that?
Bring those images up, and then in thoughts too, like you're talking about Tony Bark and the retraining of pediatricians and things like that. I think it would be great, but very much like we got to retrain them on that cholesterol's not bad. We got to retrain them on giving Tylenol during acute infections actually increases the risk of mortality and death. We've got to retrain them on we got to stop the freaking antibiotic issues that they're causing. You know what I mean? So it's like we got a lot of retraining we have to do with these pediatricians. You also mentioned the power in our purse. All right. two thoughts. One, the purse and the money in the pharmaceutical buying off our politicians is much greater than our purse right now. We've got to change that. And I'm afraid if they start losing the money they're getting from the pharmaceuticals, they're probably going to increase our taxes and start doing more of those Ukrainian deals and things like I don't even have been studying that. But that, it just that's a major issue. But if we start now saying, if you're like, I tell people, like, right now, I understand the harm of vaccines, all right, and I understand the truth that parents aren't being given by their pediatrician, and I don't care if the pediatrician gives the parents a choice. You need to realize that you are contributing your dollars to keep a person in their office running, to harm other children if you are purchasing anything from them, advice or drugs or vaccines, even if you're not purchasing the vaccines. So your money, your power, and your purse, your dollar needs to be saying, I'm going to seek out and the majority of the time, your doctor doesn't need to see you personally. You could consult by phone. You could consult with many of these medical or naturopaths or myself.
Sure.
And it's a shameless plug. I know people may see it that way.
No, it's a proud plug. You should plug. You're a naturopath, and your patients are very healthy. Do you have patients dying of measles left and right in your practice, Dale? I mean, right?
No. My son got whooping cough. They got chicken pox. No big deal. We were even kind of worried about Magnolia because when she got chicken pox, I think we found like a total of 5 spots on her, and we're like, geez, and Pete, is this not enough? Maybe we ought to, need to get more of those.
So let me be perfectly clear.
I don't have a naturopathic degree or certification or anything like that. Chiropractic degree, doctorate of chiropractic, but studied, like, I always tell people, like, people will be, what are your degrees and letters behind your name? And I say, I have very few, because this day and age, I freaking hate to pay for somebody to have to teach me when I can learn it for free just by acquiring all the textbooks, all the documents, all the science.
Yeah, gotta respect that. You're talking to somebody that used to be faculty in the Department of Pathology at the University of Pittsburgh, and I gotta respect that. So when you're talking about the economics here, my model was that we take the vaccines away from pediatricians, right? And we just put them into a shop, like maybe a pharmaceutical shop or whatever, nutraceutical, whatever. A health food store. Who cares? It's a benign product that sits on the shelf. And by the way, who's going to willfully overdose on these microneedle patches, like put 30 ml on their body because who's going to do that? Like, right? So you price them.
More is better. But here's the problem with that. Now you're going to have a bunch of pediatricians who are, looking for factory jobs, or they're going back to naturopathic nutrition school and chiropractic school.
I have to agree with Paulie Tommy. On that one, I have to agree with Paulie Tommy. That's not our problem to solve. Right?
I agree with that. I agree with
that. They can be rehabilitated. How about they go to work recovering people from autism? How about that?
I love it.
How about that? I got a job for them. How about they work to get people healthy, improve their immune system, and guide them out of autoimmunity by detoxifying and getting the aluminum out of their fucking bodies. Let's do that for pediatricians. Yep. So let's talk about your illness rates, deaths, and timing of vaccines here. I'm going to cut to that, and you're on.
Yeah. Cool. Next slide quickly. Just kind of go through it. You can kind of hit it, and I'll talk as you go.
Sure. I just have to go to the browser to do this, I think. So let me know if it changes. Did it change?
My image screen has not. Dang.
All right.
I just see the title.
Now let's see. There's got to be a button here I can change.
I don't know if you going through the. Nope, that just enlarged it. Is it in PowerPoint presentation slide? Are you able to do a forward towards it?
What I can do,
Are you able to go to the other slide, like close it out, go to the other next slide?
I can go down to the next one. Now is it changing?
No, not on my screen, not on Facebook yet. Dang.
All right, let's see.
I've done a few of those, folks, on Facebook. I've done a few of these videos about the when the vaccine was introduced on a nationwide scheduled program, when it was just like developed, those types of things. And if you look at the infectious disease rate, mortality rate specifically, you'll see that some actually go up, some of them went down, very little. In most of them, all of them basically went rapidly down by 90+% before. And these are Journal of American Medical Association. These are CDC's own website, graphs. And I laugh because it's like, if you show those to people, what it does, there you go. I see it now. All right.
There you go.
So my joke there, everybody's wondering what sliced bread and the glorious sliced bread. It was like I forget what it was, like 19 teens, like 1910, somewhere in there. You had sliced bread maker. The first sliced bread maker was invented. If you're going to say something caused something, what caused it had to come before the effect.
Right.
The cause had to come before the effect. You see those vaccines there on the right top corner where diphtheria, pertussis, measles, polio, those vaccines are according to when those vaccines were introduced on a massive scale or introduced, period, like the measles vaccine 1963. And that black line there for measles, you can see it's down to 0 statistically.
Which one is measles? Which one is measles?
Was the black line, the black, very small black line.
Which quadrant?
Right upper corner.
Up here? Okay.
I can't see you or anything like that.
All right.
On the right-hand side of the screen, the vaccine that's furthest to the right-hand side, that indicates...
Yeah, it was basically down to 0 before the first vaccine came in. Now, were they vaccinating sporadically around the country?
Before that? Not
before
that I know of.
Okay,
no.
So...
Diphtheria, they were. You could say diphtheria, the toxoid, the modified toxin, was around 1926, I believe. So you could put a vaccine back there for the diphtheria, but still look at the rate before the 1920s.
Yeah.
It had already declined rapidly, and then it spiked around the time they introduced it, and then it went back to the same trajectory.
Yeah.
It didn't drop off like massively. It held the same trajectory. So as a scientist, asking you can't say something affected things unless it changes the rate. Now, measles, if you look at a microscopic level around 1963, the disease rate did go down. The mortality rate went down, but it reduced a diagnosis. But does that mean that children were living and not dying nearly the same rate? No, that doesn't mean that because of the vaccine.
Right.
So flu and pneumonia went up after 1977 when we started
vaccinating. They also, the 450 to 500 deaths in 1960, 1959 before the vaccine came in was in a population of 180 million people. And that was before they realized that 2 doses of vitamin A would significantly reduce mortality. Yeah. So... There's as a scientist, I can say you're exactly correct that the causality. Suzanne Humphreys, of course, has her book Dissolving Illusions, which has these, which has all these figures and diagrams. I even saw someone who was a vaccine risk denialist cook the curve data, take the curve data, truncate all of the reduction off from prior to 1960, right, and then try to show that there was a net reduction. But you can't go from 450 to 500 deaths and then bring in a vaccine and bring in vitamin A and bring in immunoglobulin therapy and say that it was the vaccine. What you can say is you're certainly getting a reduction in the number of diagnoses, but with asymptomatic transmission of these pathogens, there's no herd immunity for the immunocompromised if the vaccinated can walk right into the school with these pathogens. As infections, as you said, pertussis, you can carry it. It just minimizes the symptoms. All right, so what's the next one?
Pneumonia, influenza. Go ahead to the next one. People, I kind of explained that. I mean, it went up after we implemented that vaccination. The rates did. So it's like, how are we saying? And for 2017-18 year. Flu, highest ever recorded, and that's where I'm talking about the non-direct effects of vaccination, meaning a reduction in heterotypic immunity. CDC can claim all they want. We know they commit fraud. We know that they lie. So I don't trust their statistics on who was truly vaccinated and who wasn't vaccinated out of those 80,000 who died in that year, roughly. So that being said, what if all these people who chose not to be vaccinated, they got real sick after they got their vaccine, they chose not to be vaccinated the next year, 2017, 18, or in future years, and then they died because their heterotypic immunity was distorted or vaccine enhanced. I did a video yesterday on Facebook about vaccine enhanced pneumonia.
Yeah.
And tissue damage in the lung.
Oh, absolutely. Right. So you and I have talked about that. As you're talking about this next one, I'm going to go grab some figures off of my blog to add to this. So England's scurvy mortality rates also declined. Is that what you're showing here?
Yeah, I always ask, when did we start vaccinating against scurvy? And if you look, you go back and you put that in mirror image right over the top, you post it right over the top. You look at the scurvy rates going down at the same trend as infectious illness death rates going down.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like the rates went down the same. They're directly associated. Scurvy is malnutrition, period. Yes, it's vitamin C deficiency, but it would also, you would take vitamin A, you would take vitamin E, you would take all these other nutrients, would be the same basic rate. So it's like,
right. Sure.
That, so it just shows that the same trend line makes a huge difference. And mothers really love this. I find it one of the best tools and opportunities or weapons I have to really communicate the truth and point out the lies. Their lie is truthful. Here's how it's truthful. If you were to look at the prior slides, the infectious disease before the vaccine, we had high mortality rates. Yes, you did. After the vaccine, we don't have them anymore, and that's all they say. They don't say, like you mentioned, prior to 400 to 500. But I say, actually, if you take the 4 years prior to the measles vaccine being available, the death rate was roughly 400 exactly.
Right. Exactly.
400. Yep. And it was still declining. And it took 30 more years before we did get to zero after the vaccine. So it's like that trend probably was going to happen anyways. And by this point in time, scientifically, we'd basically be at zero still.
Yeah. And CDC's most recent mortality statistics from influenza are ridiculous. They're 80,000. They're totally bogus. They're counting vaccine-induced non-respiratory virus infections and calling it vaccine. They're calling it flu syndrome. So in my blog, I did an analysis of chronic illness, and I want to try to expand this, see if I can. But in this particular blog, I looked at the rates of diseases of unknown origin published in PubMed of studies focused on diseases of unknown origin. And it's basically flatlined until 1976. In 1976, it starts increasing. And 1976 was the first national, widespread influenza vaccination campaign out of Fort Detrick, I think, for H1N1. And that I think is due to thimerosal.
Grab me a drink.
I think that's due. No, that's okay. I think it's due to thimerosal largely, because 80% of influenza vaccines contain thimerosal. So let's go back to yours. I got to find it again.
Dude, you've already done the work for me. That was something that I've been in my docket of things that I want to accomplish and do, was literally looking at the rates of all these unknown diseases that are caused by unknown reasons.
Right.
And look at them and look at the rates, and they're all going up. And right there, it's like the graph is basically right along the same trend as our vaccination.
Exactly. So this is your mortality, scurvy, and what's this one?
Results estimated 43%. My pictures in the way to read the title, and some of these maybe have been. All right.
A national and state profile of leading health problems and healthcare quality for U.S. children, key insurance disparities, and across state variations.
Yeah, 54%. So there it is. Chronic conditions increased to 54% when overweight. So this is a study where people are getting that, and this is 2011.
Wow.
So when you look at, now we're worse. I mean, look at the statistics. I don't know if you have it, but the title of it is half of millennials and 75% of Gen Zers have left their job for mental health reasons.
I saw that. That's crazy.
Are so bad right now. And this is the study where people are getting the 12.8%. So those are the studies. So people just pause their video in the future. They can grab those titles and get that stuff.
The end study prevalence of any chronic health condition was 12.8%, and this is among children and youth.
19, or what year was that?
That was 2010.
1994. Yeah, study was 2010,
okay.
But 1994 was the rate. Now, to 25% in 2000, 26% cohort in 2006, and then 54, and that does include obesity. You know what I mean?
So, yeah. Okay, so
we could say that immune dysregulation in chronic inflammation due to immune activation could cause an increase in the obesity epidemic, and I completely agree. Or liver damage and problems with triglyceride and sugar dysregulation.
Mm-hmm.
So we could argue that vaccinations are contributing to that as well. But these are, so the first vaccine on the left, it's roughly 1980, I think it was. You see, that's when the vaccine was basically developed. And then when was it implemented on a national scale of day one births, 1994? And then what happened to the rate of hepatitis B? I'm sorry, and this is ambulatory care and hospital discharges. It went up. Like, so what we're doing obviously isn't working, number one. The scientific literature does have their excuse for this, and they say it's because of immigration. Because of so many people immigrating, we're seeing the rates go up. But yet it's like, you got your excuse, but yet the perfect timing of when it went up, immigration. So vaccines induced immigration, I guess. Everybody came here because they wanted that Hep B vaccine for the newborns, I guess.
Well, I hear this all the time, and people need to recognize that the national vaccination rate in Mexico is higher than that in the United States. So it's crazy. It's
unreal.
Well, if you think about it, in Brazil, right, more vaccinations are always better because vaccine equals health. That's the quality of care that they have there. So here's your all viral hepatitis age-adjusted rates of ambulatory care.
And that's hepatitis A and B, both. So implementation, but A was not implemented on a massive scale nearly as much.
So what you're showing here is the vaccine. Following the vaccine, there's a higher rate of ambulatory care visits and hospital discharges.
Yep, and so I got the dates of when they added these things to the schedules.
Yeah.
And this graphs are directly from the CDC's own website, and obviously they're
beautiful.
So again, just more of the same. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Go to the next one there.
That's it. That's the end.
Ah, dang. Okay. Yeah. Because there was one I had. They literally show you 2006. They show it from 2006 on, and it looks like it went down. But actually, you look at, and they're talking about hepatitis A, and it's like it went down prior to, and it was literally there before the vaccine was introduced. So like it's like way up here, and then it's, the rates were, and it went down to here, and that's when they vaccinated, and they show you from here, and it kept going down just a little bit. So on their little splice of 2006 to 2010, it looks really, really good. They don't show you years past where people would be like, oh, wait, the rates already went down prior to the vaccine being available.
Right. So they're playing fast and loose with the statistics. We've seen this before. What can people do with this? How do they get it to their legislators? How do they get it to their school board members and their... I don't think it's going to be useful. I agree with Paulie Tommy. It's not going to be useful for parents to try to educate pediatricians directly. But school board members are parents. And, and pediatricians are parents too, but legislators, I've seen their mindset expand as a result of parents not only just telling their personal stories, but citing the statistics and citing the studies. So where can they find more information on this from you, Dale? Where do people find your stuff?
Wilddoc.com, thewilddoc.com. So,
Cool.
one word. The Facebook page, Instagram, trying to get up to I need 100, 200 more people to follow me on Instagram, and then I can do the swipe up thing, and then people can get studies immediately and things like that. So,
okay, so thewilddoc.com, and you need people to join you on Instagram, and you're there as the Wild Doc?
Yeah, Instagram. We got 22,000 followers on Facebook right now. We're looking to try and get to 10,000 on Instagram, which gives you the ability to do you swipe the image up, we can put out an image, and then if I mention or if I do a highlight of a study, or I do that graph from Journal of American Medical Association, and I want people to have a link to the study so that they can have the evidence in hand, not just a picture. Yeah. They can do that and swipe up, and they go right to the link, and we can provide them with that kind of stuff. So.
Cool.
Doing that kind of push right now.
So your title here is updated to have the wilddoc.com right
Sweet.
there.
Thank you, brother.
You're very welcome. I'm told I'm a very welcoming host.
You are.
I want to see if I can get to another part of this analysis before we part.
Yeah.
If I
have
the
I'm totally
result.
going to be tweeting that I won this debate, kind of like Senator Pan did about RFK.
Well, we're going to get there. Hang on just a minute. We'll get to that. We'll get to that question of who won the debate here in just a minute. But let me go over here. There it is. So in this analysis, what I looked at was the vaccine coverage in a given year of influenza on the x-axis, CDC data. Okay, and the average efficacy for that year of the flu vaccine, and the year following. There is a negative correlation. The higher the vaccine coverage for influenza, the lower the efficacy for the following 2 years. And what we know, Dale, is that the thimerosal in the current flu vaccine, about 80% of them have thimerosal, and we know thimerosal inhibits the protein ERAP1. And ERAP1 is really important for us to remember what we're immune to. And so Ben Collings' result is really important because it shows that you get increased risk of other respiratory infections other than influenza, non-influenza respiratory infections after you get the flu vaccine. And the flu vaccine has no effect on the influenza rate. Okay, and so these people are getting non-influenza respiratory infections. The doctors think that it's flu, and it's a self-fulfilling prophecy, and that's why they can get by with 18% is 18% efficacy is still is reducing the symptoms. No, it's not. It's causing these people wouldn't have flu.
Their efficacy rates are generated by test negative study designs, and test negative is, you came in with respiratory disease, let's test you for influenza. If you got tested, you got vaccinated, I don't want to test you. So then there's less people who actually had the flu being tested because they had the vaccine. So automatically it biases it. And then if they're increasing respiratory illnesses of other types, other than flu, then you're going to see lower percentage of test positive influenza cases in the vaccinated, because more of the vaccinated have these other infectious illnesses, so it skews those statistics. It causes that, so only 10% of our vaccinated people had influenza, although there was 20,000 that had all respiratory illnesses combined in the vaccinated, versus there was 10,000 people over here that didn't get the vaccine, but it was 20% of them had. So there's 100% decline in improvement. You get me on that.
I do.
That's the problem with the way they're doing their science. And to me, you're smart enough to see it. I'm not a scientist, and I'm smart enough to see it.
No, you pointed this out to me, I think about 9 or 10 months ago. You sent me a graph that you drew out on paper, and you're like, hey, wait a minute, this is test negative inference. And you're exactly right. They exclude people from testing if they've been vaccinated, and so the data don't exist. Okay, so big, deep breath and drum roll here. First of all, I want to thank you, Dr. Dale Brown. You've been an exceptionally well-behaved enemy combatant here, frenemy combatant.
I was very well behaved for myself.
Yeah, you've been very well behaved. And so you want to go and boast that you won the debate,
We should abolish all vaccinations.
Yeah, abolish all vaccinations. So, like Hotez and Pan did with their fake debate that never happened, right?
Exactly.
So we have some real points of difference here, and it's about vision. So I want to say that the probability of my vision coming true, where unsafe vaccines are replaced with safer vaccines, due to my efforts, and that's really important, people understand this, due to my efforts, is practically zero. Because I'm not going to move the needle towards safer vaccines. I'm not, because I'm not a driver in this, but I am going to be making people aware that if they're talking with somebody and they say, you're an anti-vaxxer, and if you want to win the arguments on how unsafe current vaccines are, you can point to the science that's coming that will show. I think there's science that's coming that other people are doing that will show that microneedle patches are remarkably much safer. Yeah. Right? Now, the long term, and then you can say, Doc Brown said, but the long-term health effects are unknown. We could be all setting ourselves up for some pain and suffering when we're older.
Catastrophic.
More catastrophic. And so the two worldviews are compatible.
Yeah.
Because I think that my approach of focusing on winning the argument that the current vaccines are not as safe as they're right can be totally used by anybody who would care to not vaccinate, justify that they're not, and also ban vaccination if that's your end goal. And that's not my end goal. My end goal is I don't know enough to say that all vaccines forever and a day will always and forever, have long-term human health. And you don't know enough to say that they won't. And that's what you said. So we're in agreement on that. And the answer to that, I know you're a very deeply religious person. The answer to that is science. And so long-term safety studies are absolutely needed. If I were the only way I could possibly affect change would become the director of the FDA somehow, by some miracle. And the minute I became the director of the FDA, I would classify vaccines as new drugs.
But I want you to get that new vaccine that inoculates you against the love of money, because you know that the big pharma and everybody's going to come and start giving you all kinds of job opportunities.
Look me in the eye.
I trust you, brother.
Look me in the eye. Before I made a decision that led to pain and suffering in a child, I would rather eat my own feces. Okay, now if that doesn't get me a job at the FDA, I don't know what will. But the day I became director of the FDA, I would reclassify all vaccines as new drugs. That would immediately cause them to undergo randomized prospective clinical trials with long-term 10-year, 15-year health outcome. And if they were to do that, within the first 2 years, they would say, we have to stop these studies because look at what we're doing. We have increased autism. We have increased asthma. We have increased, right? If they were done appropriately. And so I tend to focus on the parts of the science. I try to move the needle the way I know how to move it. And if people can move the hearts and minds and the souls of people to abolish vaccination, more power to you. I don't know how anybody could do that, but I'm going to try to move the needle as far and as fast as I can while I'm still breathing, so that people know that the risks are real. That children who will be hurt by vaccines are protected. We need to find them. We need to make vaccines safer. Plus, it's the law. It's 1980. I'm arguing for the law. The law of 1986 mandated that we find vaccines that are safer and that we find ways to find individuals who are most susceptible. So if anybody is really, really angry with me over this debate because they are disgusted by that, please don't displace your disgust of current vaccines with me. I'm not debating that we should keep current vaccines. We're in agreement. And so with that, I'll let Doc Brown have the last word.
I think what you're doing here and what we are doing together is My vision, I feel, is like, I admit it. It is one of those visions where people are like, it's just unattainable. We're never going to get there. That's too big of a goal. That's too big of a vision. And what I say is, I'm just going to be that man that says, I want the very, very, very best for our children. And I feel that it does not include any vaccine at all if we were doing the things we know that would bring about overall massive health benefits and the healthiest opportunity for every single child in the world. I want that. You follow me?
I do.
You're arguing for what can we do better. So it's like, I'm arguing for what we can do best.
Yeah.
You're arguing for what we can do better. You would gladly join me on the argument for what is best once you see the needle move in the direction of better, because you want to sit here and argue this strongly enough that you can start to move the needle in the better direction. You follow me?
Absolutely.
People will sit there and say that, Dale, you're not going to get anywhere with arguing for what is best, because nobody's going to even fathom or entertain the idea that that's ever possible, can ever be done. So then you're not going to change them at all. And I get that. So that's where we're at right now.
Yeah, and I'm in the same boat, because we did not get thimerosal out. We did not get thimerosal out. All the evidence said we should get thimerosal out. You're supposed to have the last word. I do this all the time. I'm sorry. So,
no worries.
All right, so let's do this. Can we agree that if you're watching this video, Dale, do you agree that people can vote? The viewers can vote in their comments, right? I'm going to put it up to the viewers. If you agree with both of us, put both. If you agree with Dale but not me, put Dale. Dr. Wild Doc, if you agree with me but not Dr. Brown, I'm a loser. Nobody's going to agree with just me, right? So we have three options. Agree with both, agree with him, or agree with me.
I think some people are worried about doing that because they don't want to offend one of us, because I think most people love us both. So,
No, I won't be offended. I cannot be offended by somebody who disagrees with me. I'm a scientist. It's been beaten out of me by 7 years of studies for training for PhD. The letters behind my name.
Looks like we're getting both. Looks our votes are coming in from both. For both. So, dang, I can't do my bragging. But I didn't say I was going to brag like Tan and Hokies, which would be a complete lie. So I can still brag like them.
But I can still concede the debate to you. I can do that. I can just give it to you if that's what you want.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. See, somebody said she said, "Sorry, James, I agree with Dale." Another person says, "James is where we are right now, though."
Mm-hmm.
And I agree. Cool. That's where we are right now. I understand, and that's the thing, is I'm not going to get in your way of doing that, but I am going to interject my thoughts on what I feel would be best, and that's you know what I mean?
It's totally necessary. Yeah, I think it's totally necessary.
The needle of where we are is where you're working. The needle of where we need to be in the future, or where we should go, is what I'm working on. Does that make sense?
Listen, future President Dale Brown, President of the United States Dale Brown, when you appoint me Director of the FDA, somebody's got to step up to doing this. I mean, it's going to, right? When you appoint me Director of the FDA.
I want to become a politician just so I can stand there toe-to-toe and have the microphone for more than freaking, 10 seconds like all those mothers and fathers out there in California, so that I can actually sit there and speak to the corruption that is in our nation. That's why I want to be.
When I went out to Oregon, I saw a politician who took on, he's a Republican, and he took on his liberal Democrats, and he just looked at them and he said, "I've been working with you guys for 7 years. I called you my friends. I can't believe the position that you're taking on this issue." Like, he was stunned.
Yeah.
And, it's party politics, man. All right, so listen, we got to go. You got to go. We got stuff to do. People, when you talk to your legislators, if they won't listen to you on abolition, you have another strategy. If you want to tell them that vaccines are the bane of human existence and that they're killing people, and you're correct about that, if you want them to listen to you, I would advocate for you to say, do you think vaccines are perfectly safe? But don't you think they could be made a little safer? Because when you get the toe in the door, right, and then you can say Supreme Court, considers them unavoidably unsafe, which is bullshit. It's bullshit. They're not unavoidably unsafe. It's bullshit. Then you can get them thinking, and that's what it really takes to open up the mind a little bit, is to say, if you take a little bit, if you give a little bit towards me, I'll give a little bit towards you. All politics is compromise. And so, Dale, I'm so grateful. So grateful. Thank you for being part of this.
Yep.
Right
I
on.
think you just said what people should do for you. I'm going to take those slides that we had about the graphs of infectious illnesses and the dates of when we implemented on a national scale the vaccine campaigns, so that people can take to their politicians, because politicians are worried that if I do anything to not stop the anti-vaccine movement, then we're going to have all these children dying, and it's going to be my fault because I didn't do or vote the way I was supposed to be able to stop the anti-vaccine movement. So you can show them and go through that PowerPoint, just like Robert Kennedy did, Robert RFK Jr. did, Bobby did. I'm going to put out that PowerPoint presentation on my website. So if people were to sign up, email, whatever, you get it right away. If you keep checking back on the website, Instagram, I'll let you all know. I'm going to put that PowerPoint out there with the references, with the studies ready to go. You take those and you show them the graphs, and you just say, simple explanation. You're not going to see these mortality rates go up if you stop to vaccinating even. You're going to see the illness rates go up, but not the death rates, because the death rate had already declined before the vaccine. And when people see that, I feel like they stop and they sit back and they say, wow, what I've been led to believe, that vaccines are the saviors of humanity, isn't true.
That's
now
right.
I'm going to question vaccines. So that's what I'm going to do for everybody.
That'd be great. I'd love to see it. That's awesome. So let's see if I can get this music to play on the way out. This is by Noco. Let's see if it'll play over us. Now that's the intro. Dang, I hit the wrong one.
Love you, brother, though. Love you, man.
All right, I got to do this. There we go.
This is a production of the WWDNYK Studios.
No, it's not right
Children
either.
Or animals were harmed in the production of this podcast.
I like that. What in the world?
All right.
Hi everyone, I'm your host, Dr. James.
Are you signed off?
Nope, we're still live.
In this episode,
No, we cool.
evidence that science
Good.
is broken.
Doing a like newscaster flip of the tongue here.
People will know the price of corporate science really taking its toll. Whistleblowers blow, public health data low. They say the science is settled, but how do they
Unbreaking
know?
Science.
Ask questions, critically think, you should try it. It's pure, unadulterated science. Unbreaking science.
Unbreaking Science.
You can't deny it, you sure can't buy it. Fact check, use your brain, don't be quiet. It's pure, unadulterated science. Unbreaking
Unbreaking
science.
Science.
Using the tools of the trade to back up what we say. You can't be silent when it comes to unbreaking science. Let's light the truth up, next level ultraviolet. You got a hypothesis, do a critical test. Make an observation without being biased. Use logic and reason mixed with evidence. Look for patterns and results with significance. Calculate them numbers, real accurate, or else your findings won't be legit. Don't cherry pick, but be skeptic, cause broken science, it makes us sick. That science being funded by the very same people that run it, so they can promote a product, so they can make that money. Try not to laugh, cause this ain't nothing funny. All these science-like activities, no joke, they call them studies. Hand-picking sample groups and no true placebos. Losing public trust the more and more that we know. The truth will be told, the people will know. The price of corporate science really taking its toll. Whistleblowers blow, public health data low. They say the science is settled, but how do they know?
Unbreaking Science.
Ask questions, critically think, you should try it. It's pure, unadulterated science. Unbreaking science.
Unbreaking Science.
You can't deny it, you sure can't buy it. Fact check, use your brain, don't be quiet. It's pure, unadulterated science.